Hello! Welcome to the Jericho Comedy Podcast. I'm Connor McReynolds. Over the last couple of months on the Jericho Comedy Podcast, I've had the pleasure of speaking to a whole host of brilliant, award-winning stand-up comedians, which I have loved. But Jericho Comedy also produces a whole host of fantastic improvised comedy shows. And much like with our stand-up nights, we work with some truly amazing performers on those shows. This week on the Jericho Comedy Podcast, I'm chatting to one of those brilliant improvisers, Vicky Hawley. Vicky is an improviser extraordinaire. You may have seen her in our Improvised adventure, the show that must not be named. Just before lockdown, Vicky had also started running her own night with Jericho Comedy, Best of the Quest, an improvised comedic Dungeons and Dragons style adventure. Vicky's such great fun. I'm really looking forward to having a chat with her and playing a couple of silly games. You're also going to be hearing a message very shortly from our lovely friends at Oxfordshire Mind. But right now, let's get this adventure started. Here is Vicky Hawley. Vicky Hawley, hello. Thank you so much for joining me on the Jericho Comedy Podcast.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, Connor.
How are you this evening?
Do you know, I'm very well. The weather has been miserable, but in my heart, it is sunny.
Yeah! Oh, that's a very positive vibe.
Oh, thank you, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks. I'm sat here looking out at, as you say, a very, very rainy evening. I've got a soaking wet cat sat beside me looking very annoyed, like I'm responsible for it raining outside. He keeps looking at the rain, then looking at me and being like, come on, turn it off.
Press the button, weatherman.
Exactly, it's just not on me. But other than the weight of that pressure on me, I'm very well, thank you. I've been so looking forward to chatting to you, Vicky.
You too. I've been excited about this all week.
Yes! Well, Vicky, you have you've done so much with us at Jericho Comedy. You have been in lots of our improv shows. And just before lockdown, you were getting started with your own night with Jericho, Best of the Quest.
I was, yeah. We had a couple of really lovely shows.
Yeah, well, tell us about Best of the Quest.
Well, it will shock you to learn, Connor, that I spend a lot of my time playing and performing Dungeons and Dragons related content. It's been what, less than 3 minutes and we're already on this? Great. So Best of the Quest was kind of my idea because I think a lot of magic can come out of improvised shows, and a lot of people are already invested in the magic of tabletop role-playing games and in the magic of the kind of medieval high fantasy Tolkien inspired world that D&D and so many other properties occupy. So I thought, why not get a few friends, get a lovely live audience, and Jericho is actually really, really good because you get quite a variety, especially for our improv shows, you get quite a variety of ages as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's a lot of sort of teenagers who are really excited about D&D, but obviously it's quite hard to find groups and things like that. So yeah, it was really, really nice to... I realised I sound like I just pitched a show for teenagers, and I absolutely didn't do that. Well, I'm going to corner the 13 to 17 market. That's what I'm going to do, Harry. There's nothing you can do about it. Away! But yeah, so we put stuff together. We had a couple of great ones with the lovely people like John Gracie of Werewolf Live fame.
Yeah.
Sasha Ellen of Character Building Experience. Lucy Fennell, who does a lot of amazing improv stuff with the Bit and in London and is an amazing Shakespearean improviser.
Wow.
Yeah, we had a load of lovely stuff. We also did a digital Best of the Quest for a festival a little bit earlier in the year, and we had the amazing Chloe Mashita on, who's of Adventurers Wanted and all that kind of fame, and is just generally a lovely, supportive, wonderful, warm nerd presence, which is what I seek at the end of the day, I think. So it's great fun, and hopefully, once we're allowed to do live performance again, I'd love to do some more of that. But we do a lot of digital D&D stuff nowadays anyway, luckily.
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to ask you about as well, because I saw the show that you did as part of the Jericho Festival with Next Up, and it was so much fun. It was really great. And how... It struck me as someone who knows almost nothing about kind of fantasy RPG stuff. But it struck me as a format that works really well online. Has that been your experience of it during lockdown? Have you been able to kind of bring all these fun formats and stuff and continue with them in a slightly different way, or has it been very interrupted?
It's tough. I think there is no. At the end of the day, it depends what you want out of your tabletop game experience, right? Because a lot of my some people take up online tutoring or work from home during lockdown. This bastard over here is actually a professional dungeon master and runs game master and runs tabletops online digitally now quite a bit.
That is very cool.
It's really fun, and I think there's a lot of different styles, and I always encourage people to shop around if they're looking for somebody to run online games. Even if they're looking for people to run in-person games, because it's about what you're looking for, right? If you want to just kind of sit back and see essentially an improvised theatre show with some aspects of structure in terms of the rolling dice mechanic you are kind of familiar with, that's probably the easiest to translate to kind of a digital, between sort of digital and live performance. But when you do go digital, there are all sorts of online tools you can use to like have battle maps that move about, and you can obviously have easier access to digital tools like D&D Beyond and all other good digital D&D tools, where you have like your character sheets you can interact with and edit and share, and it saves you worrying about where your character sheet has gone to, which is like 2 sheets of paper that's been shoved at the bottom of your soggy bag, and all the pencils rubbed off and things. But yeah, so I'd say definitely in terms of even though it is difficult and there is no substitute for playing in person, honestly, the relationships between players and the narrative translates really well when you have a really nice group of players, as I'm very lucky to have.
Yeah. Well, that sounds great. It's really interesting that you mention, I guess, like the more positive side of it, which I maybe hadn't considered, which is, yes, you're moving it away from real life and actually being able to see each other, be in the same room and stuff, but you have access to a whole host of different tools and stuff that can really add to the experience. That sounds like a really interesting thing. And is that something that you think more generally, kind of outside of kind of D&D and those RPG games and stuff, like comedy, do you think that's something that we should be considering with comedy now? I
mean, let's be real. I mean, we don't actually. Let's not be real for like 5 seconds. But but like, even if everything has somehow got sorted by Christmas and it's all over by Christmas, which is a promise that's never been broken in history. But live performance, when it comes back, will not be the same. And I do think that there are some wonderful opportunities to do stuff digitally in terms of widening your audience, the digital interaction tools on services like Twitch and like YouTube streaming and things like that, where you can make people feel like they're more personally part of a community. One of the best things I find about, so we stream a Dungeons and Dragons podcast called Vicky's World on Twitch every Thursday from 7 till 9. Just got to get my plug in there, otherwise
please do.
Team will strangle me.
We shall add a link to that into the episode description as well, so people can check it out.
Thanks, Connor. That'd be lovely. We do just kind of goofy stuff, and it's with some nerdy London comedians. We've got our main cast is John Gracie, Sasha Ellen, Dan Simpson, and Talal Karkuti, and it's just kind of a dream team. But anyway, enough about me just kind of yelling about Vicky's World. But one of the coolest things that we have is we have chat open. So as I'm running the game, I have my players on one part of the screen, and then I have the adventure on the other part of the screen, and it's quite a small laptop. And then occasionally I can hop over to chat and see, and you can see people discussing the game, discussing your performances, getting really emotionally invested in the story. There is, without spoiling Vicky's World, because Connor, I'm sure you're going to sprint away and listen to our first arc, because our second arc's just started, ladies and gentlemen, and those who subscribe to neither. And it's really, really fun. We had just a horrible villain that I really enjoyed playing in the first arc. And my friend has just started up a personal campaign to get him skinned. And every time he buys us a Ko-Fi or he comments in chat, it's just like, "Hi, I'm here to skin XYZ." And it's like, well, you know what? But that's great. That's wonderful. You can't see that kind of thing. But also I think it's easier to engage people in a narrative than necessarily stand-up, maybe. And obviously a feature of stand-up is narrative, but I think if you're...
Yeah, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
You can get different kinds of audience feedback, I think is what I'm trying to say, online. And if you can adapt your comedy performance to that and grow off that energy instead of the energy we're used to, which is, here is laughter, delicious, 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 I will continue to do the thing I'm doing, which is how
or the alternative, oh God, where's the laughter? I must change everything about myself and everything I've ever written.
Yeah, that sounds like stand-up to me. Yeah, there you go. Actually,
we've clearly had different experiences of comedy. I'm very jealous of your view of it.
It's so much easier when you're improvising, because genuinely you haven't got anything written and you're supposed to change it. Well, you're not supposed to change it based on what makes the audience laugh. That is a naughty, bad thing to say, and I didn't say it in a recorded medium. But you can adapt your play style. You can adapt to your partner. You can adapt to your scene. Everyone else in the scene with you. You can adapt to what the audience enjoys. And you can adapt based on new information. Whereas I do think stand-up is really tough. I did it a few times, and as I believe I've said to you previously, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't good, Connor, I'll be honest.
So the first time we met, you were doing stand-up comedy. I think we were both doing a gig at Mansfield College.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed your stand-up.
Thanks,
and then I sort of just didn't really see you performing stand-up anymore, and it was kind of all improv. So what was it about stand-up that you... Was it the writing that you didn't enjoy doing, or was it the fact that it's kind of just you up there and you like being with people? What kind of brought you away from stand-up? And what can we do to win you back?
Honestly, I very much admire stand-ups, but I think my brain has been in the improv mode too long to feel confident doing stand-up. Because basically when you're improvising, one of the habits I would recommend improvisers getting into is tracking how long you've been talking for without any feedback. And that means that, if your scene partner is acting like they're enthralled by what you're saying, and they've got stuff to do, and they're keeping eye contact and they're engaged with you, then that's a sign that they're saying, keep going, go, we love what you're doing. But if they're looking a bit disengaged and wishing they could talk, then that's a time where maybe you should reassess what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think my brain is just so hardwired to be adjusting my performance constantly in reaction to other performers and in reaction to the audience, that I think, honestly, to be a stand-up, you have to be a bit more resilient in terms of audience feedback. And it has to be a question of you just have to be able to come off stage one night and think, I was funny. The audience didn't laugh as much as I wanted them to, but I know I was funny. And I have that in improv. I guess I just don't have that in stand-up. And I think maybe it's also practice. I didn't do very much stand-up, but it just feels like when you're writing and you're trying to imagine the audience's reaction, it just I feel like I've been. It just feels. It just feels like you've been writing and talking for too long without feedback.
That's so interesting. Yeah, and I guess it's something that that a lot of stand-ups are just. I watch and I'm so jealous that, like, particularly with a new bit, that they're so experienced. They've done it so much in front of audiences and they can anticipate people will like this. And, like, stand-ups who are brave enough to do something really weird and really different. And they've got to be so confident. Like, I was watching a bit of James Acaster's Netflix special, and obviously it's a bit naff to refer to, like, one of the very, very top stand-ups in the world, but
sorry, is that James Acaster that once performed with Jericho Comedy in aid of mine?
He got a start at the 2018 Comedy Gala. Yeah, absolutely. The Oxygen Your Mind Gala.
James Acaster, lovely.
When he performed 5 times in a day for us, and then a few months later his Netflix specials were released. Yeah, that is the same James Acaster, actually, Vicky.
Interesting. Just wanted to clarify. Thanks, Connor. Please go ahead.
But he had this amazing bit in one of his shows where, like, he's talking about one thing but miming, like, making a cake at the same time. And he's sort of not even really addressing, like, miming making the cake, but he's at one point, like, whipping meringues, and then just halfway through a sentence he just turns the bowl upside down over his head, and it's so totally unrelated to anything else he's saying. Amazing. But it's so hilarious and so identifiable what he's doing. But my writing mind just does not work like that. Like, I can only work on one thing, and when he's writing, clearly he's working on like 3 or 4 different ideas at the same time. It's infuriating, and that's kind of what I associate like an improviser's mind with as well, because you do a lot of long form improv.
Absolutely. And we're all very brilliant improvisers. I should just clarify, every improviser is brilliant and very intelligent. So yes, thank you very much for noticing, Connor. Very kind of you.
But it truly is extraordinary. Like, I mean, because in long form improv, not only are you thinking of those things that you've mentioned there, like, am I talking too long? Are the audience enjoying all this? But also you're acting, often singing. You've got to pace a story that you have not heard of or thought of before. You're just making it up. So it's writing, it's acting, it's singing, it's collaborating with other people. It's a huge number of different kind of muscles you're flexing there. I mean, do you understand how it's a daunting thing to someone like me who's never not really done it before? I'm like, Jesus, how do you even start thinking about improvising?
Definitely.
Like, what was your kind of first experience with it?
So my first proper experience of proper improv was when I went to university and auditioned for and got into the Oxford Imps.
Yes, you were bitten by a radioactive imp.
I was, absolutely.
Like
I grew
so
the
many
horns,
people.
I grew the tail, and then I acquired a Harry Houseman in my life, and the rest is history. That's pretty much how it went. I think you just grow up with that. Or especially in formative years in university, it's so important to have that core of people, and especially improv groups tend to be, if they're lovely and positive like the Imps are, they tend to be places you go and you feel buoyed, and these are people that support you, and you know that wherever you go and whatever you do, they will have your back. Unless you're being stupid. In that case, they will tear you down, as rightly they should. But one of the first things I was taught, one of the first 3 rules of improv I was taught, and let me hope that I can remember them all now, many years later. So you accept and build, yes and. You listen really closely to all of the offers, so not just verbal, but also physical, body language, gesture, movement, the pitch of voice. But also the third one, which is probably the most important, is making your scene partner look good. Because if you both enter into that contract, you both enter into the agreement that this isn't actually about your ego, this is about making your scene partner seem like the funniest effing person on the planet. If you both engage with that energy, then you are supported on stage. There is absolutely no need to be nervous, because even if things go wrong in improv, the audience loves to see improvisers struggle. It's so enjoyable. They love to see it when you absolutely fail a rhyme, when a chorus is an absolute car crash, because then obviously choruses get repeated. So you've got to look around to the faces of your friends and colleagues, and you have to say, get on board, we're revisiting that wall I smacked into. And everyone around you should go, yes, the wall, yes, the wall. And it's just joyous. I get why it's unsettling, but I think because in improv you have that safety net. I mean, pull back the curtain a little bit and reveal the wizard. Your safety net is your fellow performers and your friends.
Yeah.
And in a really good improv group, you will never be able to fail, because even if you have the worst show in the world, even if you're not funny, even if you're every single one of your jokes fail, even if you completely lose track of the narrative, first of all, that's not necessarily meaning that it's not the funniest show. And also it's your job to make sure that doesn't happen to other people, but it's also your group's job to make sure that doesn't happen to you, and the way you do that is by listening and by supporting. And so the idea of going on stage and being a stand-up and having nothing, like no flexibility in terms of, well, then they haven't laughed for the first minute and I've got 9 more minutes of this. Oh gosh. And like having nobody that can come in and just be like, I'm going to change the energy in the room by being a big man shark or whatever. Hello. And just like the number of walk-ons that save people and are enjoyable, just like to have that flexibility I think it comes across more as a support network to me. But I also get that obviously it's a scary thing to do, and it is. I don't think even now, when I've been doing improv for 8 long years, and like youth theatre before that, it never stops being scary, and I don't want it to, because that's the joy of it.
Absolutely,
That's the
yeah.
fun.
I mean, it just sounds like such crazy fun to have with friends, and yeah, the idea of improvising with a group of people that you're really confident that they've kind of got your back and stuff, that genuinely does sound lovely.
That's the magic of it.
And that skill set though that you have to sharpen to be able to do that really well for an audience. I mean, the first time I remember hearing that improv groups rehearsed, I was like, hold on a second.
They do what? They script, do you mean? No.
But yeah, like tell us a little bit about, because obviously you're involved with a lot of improv shows for Jericho Comedy and that kind of thing, and our audiences love the mix of different shows we do. And as you say, maybe some of our stand-up shows aren't always suitable for a younger audience, but there's always something for everyone. They can go along to the show that must not be named, or any other number of fun improv shows that we do. But yeah, tell us a little bit about what an improv kind of rehearsal session can look like.
Oh man, I mean, it's been a little bit of a while, but I think you can learn a lot about an improv group by how they rehearse and what they prioritize. I think in my opinion, it's always best to have a director or somebody in charge of an improv rehearsal. You might say, well, it's supposed to be collaborative and everyone's supposed to be listening to each other, but at the end of the day, having one strong voice in order to guide a show, it's very similar logic to having a director for a scripted show, or somebody that, I don't know, watches a series of like a comedy show or whatever, which would technically be considered, I guess, stand up, but they have directors and things like that. And it's really important to make sure everybody respects that person and listens to the direction they're pulling in. And then generally you do a lot of exercises about connection, about getting you used to each other's rhythms and habits. And I like to think and hope that pretty much everybody I performed with pretty consistently, I would probably be able to tell you their, like, on average, the most common kind of joke they'll do, their instinct if something's going wrong, their instinct if something's going right, just like the funniest things they do. And you have to do a load of exercises to build that connection. And at the end of the day, a lot of improv is about vulnerability, and that is so important, because if you feel like you can't be vulnerable in a small room with people who are also going to be doing this really silly, ridiculous thing we call improv, then how on earth are you going to be vulnerable and be able to put your trust in those people on stage in front of a load of strangers, many of whom would delight in seeing you fail? So you got to just work on that. So
interesting.
Yeah, but there's a lot of stuff.
It's so incredible. I mean, another side of so much of the improv that you do, you're involved with outside of Jericho as well, but everything you do, like Bumper Blighton, Multiverse Improv, Improvised Sherlock Holmes, Show Must Not Be Named. I mean, there's such a depth of knowledge you have to have on the subject matter as well. It's like, how much time and effort do you put into kind of learning and maintaining your knowledge of things like Harry Potter and Enid Blyton, just to be able to improvise around these ideas and stories?
That's a really good question. I think specifically with genre long form and genre improv, which for some reason seems to have become a specialty of mine, or at least a statistic, a dominating statistic of mine. I guess the public at large will dictate whether or not it's a specialism. But I think you have to devote a lot of time to it. Luckily, with things like Holmes and Harry Potter, obviously I grew up with both of these things, and so the countless hours I will have put into the franchises for both of them. I was very, very passionate about Sherlock Holmes as a teenager, very, very excited about just the magic of this kind of superhero who used to be able to tell these amazing deductions just by looking at somebody, and all the amazing I looked more into it, the amazing history of just the fandom related to Sherlock Holmes, of the people when he fell off Reichenbach Falls, as I'm sure you know is a key part of Holmesian canon. People went around with black armbands and petitioned the Strand
my God.
He was a real figure, and he continues to be a real figure of sort of international emotion, and it's really engaging. I think that's what engages me about any of these genres that I get involved with, is just the amount of, if you say a name from them or a moment from the stories, I really like it when an audience feels something in reaction to that. But yeah, I think countless hours in Harry Potter, which I grew up with my reading with my grandpa, so that is held very dear to my heart. And obviously it's a real shame that J.K. Rowling takes the bigoted view she does now, but I do think there is still a magic in Harry Potter, and death of the author will claw that thing away from her. She said, "Get your hands off it, Joanne, it's ours now." We're in a bookshop in Oxford and most of us are queer, you can't touch this. But in terms of Blyton, actually, Blyton was a series that, or at least specifically, so we do Bumper, it tends to be more related to sort of the Famous Five and the Adventure series and a couple of the school series than necessarily the more like fantastical, like Faraway Tree magic stuff. It's hard to improvise with magic, because otherwise why doesn't that just solve all your problems? It's really tough to do. So that I actually hadn't read much of or participated much in before auditioning for the show. Oh God, many years ago now. So I remember I was either in my final year of uni or just out of it. And I remember specifically going charity shop to charity shop and just buying big piles of these Blyton books in preparation for this show and for this audition. And just people looking at me, because they were, the Adventure series is for younger children, and just being like, what are you up to? What are you doing physically? Yeah, it's ours. And what's less important than the time is the actual nature of engagement you give with it. So I love to annotate my copies of specifically Blyton stuff. I really love, we have little story times sometimes before we go on stage in Edinburgh, where we all sit round in a little circle, all in our little dresses and our little shorts, and we read a page each from a Blyton story. So basically, so we can get our mouths around the language and stuff. But it's also very wholesome to be sat, backstage at Underbelly.
That is, extremely wholesome. Next door, there's a 21-year-old incel screaming about how all lives matter, and then you're there and it's like, okay, my turn to read Blyton.
It's exactly that. Oh, women are slags. And Bethany then stepped off the horse. What a lovely outing they'd had.
I love it. Edinburgh needs more of that wholesome content.
Absolutely. Plus, I just love the imagery of us all walking around like evacuees in our 20s and 30s. Oh, hello. Would you like to come and have a jolly old picnic with us? You are 26 years old. Yes, I am. It's just that kind of absurdity that if you invest in, people really invest in and people really enjoy it. And I love that so much. Fuck it. Why can't I be a wizard?
It does sound so lovely. You mentioned Edinburgh there, Vicky. Obviously this year. Listener, you may not have heard. It's been a bit of a strange year. How did August kind of, I guess we're speaking beginning of October now, but how did kind of August come and go for you this year? Did it feel like a strange one for you?
Do you know it did? I have done Edinburgh since I was 18. Every single year without fail, and they have been simultaneously incredible joys and the most effing exhausting periods of my life. So do you know, I was so worried that I would desperately miss Edinburgh, but I think partially because the festival wasn't going on. So I didn't feel like, I was missing out on the joys of just having an audience every day and, being in that world of performers and 3 shows and just sprinting all over and being very excited about doing art. I think, to be honest, I was kind of relieved for the break. And I know that sounds bad, but we had a few nice digital shows of a couple of shows I was going to do, like character building experience and things. I was getting started with, we were well into the first arc of Vicky's World. So obviously I had sort of some nice weekly improv stuff, and obviously working as I do, my mother's voice sniffs in the back of my head. Working as a professional GM, she's actually super lovely. She's like, well, whatever you can make work, and I'm like, thanks, Mum. It's fantastic. fantastic. My sister's a lawyer and my mum is obviously very patient. So, you sure you don't want to? No, mother, the comedy will see me through.
We have spoken about how you've done stand-up in the past, that maybe you, for a number of reasons, it wasn't quite for you. You do all these really cool things, like you are a professional. I'm always reticent to say dungeon master because it does sound like something else, but that is the correct remotely. Title. Is that correct?
So Dungeon Master is specifically relating to somebody that runs Dungeons and Dragons, TM. And Game Master tends to be the catch-all term for somebody who more widely runs tabletops. But most tabletop systems have their own terms, so things like storyteller or narrator, when you're kind of someone staring the narrative.
What's your preferred term? I like the sound of storyteller. Sounds like a nice one.
Storyteller's very cool, actually. Please call me a professional storyteller from now on. Thank you.
I would love that. Well, you are a professional storyteller. You're obviously an improviser as well, which is also telling stories, of course. Yeah. I'm slightly obsessed. One thing I love to talk to people about, creative people like you, are the kind of creative things that we haven't tried yet, but that we've always sort of had an itch at the back of our heads. Like, I'd like to pick that up. Like, I was chatting to Cheska, wonderful Cheska, Dragprov, on another podcast a few weeks ago.
Legend.
And speaking to her, I was just like, Jesus Christ, you need to write a novel. Like, hurry up and write a YA novel right now. And sometimes it's just like really, really obvious. But are there any things that you've sort of thought, oh yeah, I've always wanted to give that a go? Like, I don't know why I ask this of everyone. But yes, I love hearing from creative people about these different avenues. Like maybe sometimes unexpected things. Like, I don't know why. There's no end goal with the question. I'm just interested in you as a creative person. Is there anything else that you've not necessarily given a go to before, but you've always kind of thought, oh, I'd love to try that?
This is a really interesting question. I'm very lucky in that I've had the opportunity to try a lot of stuff that I've wanted to try.
Yeah.
I did archery for a little bit, horse riding, basically just whatever would
word.
make me a cool elf person, essentially. If someone in Lord of the Rings can do it, I can do it, mother. I was very bad at horse riding. I loved the horses, and I read cover to cover several reference books about horses. So I was this like very excitable 10-year-old, about head and shoulders above all of the other girls who had been riding since they were like, I don't know, 4, born on the back of a thoroughbred on the downs or whatever. And I just came in and I just loved discussing about, did you know horses can't vomit? That's why it's very dangerous to have a colicky horse. And they just looked at me like, do you want to sit on the animal or not? I'm like, yeah, should we discuss types of bedding for horses? Because hay is good, but some horses have allergies, so you would have to use sawdust. It's just, I had my glasses then, so just imagine me just adjusting those, flicking
that
through
is
it.
So funny.
You know, I always thought I would be good at pottery because I saw it on the Generation game when I was very little, and I couldn't understand how they were messing it up, right? Because it looks so simple when you see a professional potter. I was there, like age 6, being like, you fools, you idiots, you fluttering nincompoops. How do you not know? You simply press with your thumbs. And then I got the chance to try it a few years ago. And Connor, I was beyond bad. It was just devastating. The turning of the potting wheel, like I don't know, the clay is just very rough against your hands, and I've got the sensibilities of sort of a foppish Regency gentleman. And so I just looked at my mum about 10 minutes into it and went, I'm not enjoying this as much as I thought I would. And she was doing her best with a bowl and trying to build it up, and I'd literally just like made a small mound.
So funny.
So there you go.
I didn't realize until right now that the YouTube reaction video I need is you watching pottery fails and just heckling from your position.
You like, blithering idiot.
What's wrong with you? Get your thumb in there, moron. It's too dry. Where's the water?
That's exactly how I was. But also age 6.
That is so brilliant. I also love the confidence of looking at something and saying, I'd fucking smash that.
Yeah.
I would nail that.
I grew out of that so much. I don't do that anymore. But age 6, I was just like, you idiots. How can you not do this? It's obvious I'd be great. Luckily I grew out of that. Some people never grow out of that stage, but...
Oh, yeah, quite, yeah, unfortunately. I had a similar thing. I remember, I think it was the first family holiday we ever took to France. And we were on this campsite, and I saw a mother showing her daughter how to dive into the pool. Ooh. And I, as like this very confident, very chubby little 7-year-old who could barely swim, I went over and I was like, ladies, watch and observe.
Watch the master.
And I just did like this enormous belly flop into the water. And I just remember like looking back at them and being like, you're welcome. Like, now you can do what I do. But I was just watching and I was like, this is absolutely absurd. Why is her form so dreadful getting into the water? I should show her how. It's like never having done it in my life.
Do you know, I very rarely say this to people, but thank God we didn't meet as children. Could you fucking imagine the egoism in that room, Connor? What fools they are. Yes, what idiots. How do they not know? Simply you tuck the knees and roll, and then you extend the hands. You're having fun in there, kids, watching the Olympics. Begone, mother, we're judging. Chubby 6-year-olds like, you fools, you blithering idiots.
Oh, I so wish we'd done it. Think of how we would have changed the world.
Oh,
everyone would do things at our standards. That's all I've ever dreamed of.
Oh, I think I've gone too far the other way now, though, because I find myself so often saying, oh, that's all right. Or, yeah, that's okay. And then I'm looking at stuff that's clearly been done very poorly, very often by me. I'm like, something that people might not know about me because I don't talk about it. And honestly, people don't ask. I'm just a terrible cook. I'm just a devastatingly bad cook. I just can't.
Really?
Yeah, I find it tedious and boring to put the food in, and then it never tastes good, and then I have to put it in my mouth. It's like it's a very visceral way to experience your own failure. Like if you fail a test, you can put it away, put it in a drawer. You know, fall off a horse. It hurts a few days, but that's fine. You physically, within perhaps 2 hours, have to eat what you have failed at. You have to experience it with your nose and your entire mouth and your hands and often people judging.
And the thing with that as well, like the thing I'm not too bad a cook. I really enjoy cooking and stuff. Ooh. But the thing I find when I do get it wrong, the soul destroying part is like, I can't have another dinner. Like I can't just cancel this one out by going and eating something that I really like. Like that's a mistake that you have to live with until your next meal. Mm-hmm.
It's a lethal
mistake. And that
mistake.
Is sad. It's really sad.
Because then it haunts you and you feel bad all night. And somebody, like your partner, might be like, are you all right, honey? You're like, yeah, there's just something inside me making me sad. I don't know why I voiced you like a children's character, but there you are.
I love it. I hope we do the rest of the podcast with children's character voices. Well, Vicky, there's so much more that I want to talk to you about, but right now we are going to go to a message from our lovely friends at Oxfordshire Mind. Have a listen to this.
Are you caring for someone and struggling to cope?
Suffering with low mood or feeling anxious?
Experiencing discrimination and not sure of your options?
You are not alone. Did you know that you can ask to speak to an Oxfordshire Mind Wellbeing worker through your local GP practice? A wellbeing worker can help you to identify what is important to you, offer time, space and support for you to work out the positive changes you want to make and support you to reach those goals. Tell you about relevant services you can access to improve your wellbeing and support you with making referrals. Our service is currently available over the phone to anyone registered with a participating GP practice in the City and South West Oxfordshire. For more information, please ask at your GP practice or call the Oxfordshire Mind information line on 01865 247 788.
There's a place where all of your dreams come true. Hello, my friends. It's me, your friendly feline paladin, Katayab Khan. I'm from a podcast called Vicky's World, where a perilous quest is just a thing you do. It's cool as cats, man. It's a comedy D&D adventure filled with action, conspiracy, murder, and a cast of diverse characters. Like the mysterious shape-shifting wizard Sally Spearfish, the tough but tiny kung fu cop called Gwathryn, and shiny golden knight and best friend ever Archie Morgan. And it's all created and narrated by the goddess of games mastery herself, Vicky Hawley. So grab your horse and join the crew. You can find Vicky's World on all podcast platforms, or watch us live on twitch.tv/Vicky's World RPG. Subscribe now and I'll see you down in Vicky's World.
All right, Vicky, you've gone on some incredibly difficult quests before, battling dragons and trolls on all sorts of improvised adventures. But there's one thing you've not faced before: a 33-year-old Irish Caucasian male with a list of 10 pressing questions. And there's only one way to defeat this foe, and that is by answering those questions with candor. Are you ready to take on the challenge?
Heck yes, I am.
Fantastic. Question 1. Vicky, what's the funniest gift you've ever bought someone?
Ooh. Oh, these are tough. I remember these are tough.
Oh, yeah, these are pressing questions.
The funniest gift, I think the funniest gift that I sometimes give people when we play tabletops together or when we've just kind of hung out and participated in fictional spaces a lot, is sometimes I used to do drawings for people for their gifts. You might think that that's actually a really lovely gift, but I personally think it's quite egotistical because they did not ask. Just the idea, and it's usually because I've drawn their character before and think it's really cool, but also because I want the ego boost, and also because I haven't had time to buy them a proper present. But just the egoism. I look at myself like an out-of-body experience as I send these messages. It's like, hey, happy birthday! Just thought you'd enjoy my interpretations of your creative ideas. I worked really hard on the hands on this one. Enjoy. Then I just wait and see, because it's quite a personal thing to give someone, so then they have to give me a compliment.
Absolutely. The gift you're really giving there is the obligation to say something nice to you.
The only gift I will accept.
I love that. Vicky, who do you think would win a poker game played between Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Catwoman, and Jericho Comedy's Harry Hyson?
Ooh, that's tough. I mean, obviously the box office would win at the end of the day, because everyone would pay to see that. Now, I am big gay, so obviously I have to say Wonder Woman out of obligation and hopeful romance.
Absolutely.
But I reckon
Solidarity.
Harry would nail it by the basis of just, I think maybe winning in terms of the game. He would obviously lose big time because, Batman's got infinite dollar. Catwoman can steal it. But in terms of winning long term, I do not see a situation in which Jericho Comedy's Harry Howsam does not leave that game with at least 4 new acts. And a themed new night with like a superhero improv or a superhero show where it's like, we're going to raise money for mine, but we're also going to beat up some bad guys. Welcome to Jericho Comedy's Thunderdome. So I think, long-term Harry Howsam wins and the audience
That is
wins.
so true. That's true. In a sense, we all win. But Wonder Woman's actually going away with the pot.
Absolutely. She's got the lasso of truth, baby, just flicking it onto everyone's ankles. Not that she'd ever cheat, because she's wonderful.
She's so wonderful.
Anyway, sorry, back in the room.
Vicky, what's the strangest thing you've ever received in the post?
It's so frustrating that I have a top 3.
I now need to hear all of those 3 in reverse order, please.
In 3rd place, it is my regular supply of live-action roleplay letters, which I write and exchange between my character and my character's friends. I love LARP. It's a really stupid, fun thing to do. And obviously, we haven't been able to go out into a field and camp out and mess around and play characters for over a year now, because it's been since September 2019. So yeah, exactly a year. Usually we only have to wait the dark months. But so often we write to each other in character, and it's just so fun to post.
Oh, that is so fun.
I got cool wax seals. I mix up the different colours of wax, and I send it off being like, how is your family? Are they surviving the war with the barbarian orcs? I am settling in well, and my doctoral practice is going excellently, but recently my brother returned from sea and he was injured. He's fine now, though. I'm a very good pretend doctor. So that's number 3. Number 2 is a pair of worm on the string earrings, which I bought for myself and I have no regrets about. And number 1 is actually something that I didn't receive, but I sent. I was on Etsy like every single good lesbian. And I sent for her birthday to my older, very fashionable, very well put together, quite sophisticated lawyer sister a pair of Fimo Clay Greg's sausage roll earrings. And she loved them. She fucking loved them. Oh shit, sorry Connor, are we allowed to swear?
Oh god, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
In that case, she fucking
there are
loved
some
them.
words some words that can't be used to describe those earrings, but
swearing
fucking incredible is the only legitimate way to describe those earrings.
They were not that
Extraordinary.
expensive. If you send me your postal address, I will send you some.
Oh my god, I would get my ears pierced just to wear sausage roll earrings.
You gotta do it, Connor. You gotta do it. It's lockdown. We're all fucking insane.
Challenge extended.
Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it.
Oh man, that is something else.
That'll be amazing.
Vicky, what is your favourite Shakespeare play?
Ooh, that's tough. I think my favourite Shakespeare play is Twelfth Night. I really like Midsummer, and I think there are some really interesting interpretations of like classics like Macbeth and things, but not that Twelfth Night isn't a classic, but at the end of the day, it's got cross-dressing, it's got same-sex attraction, it's got silly yellow stockings, everything works out really well in the end, and yeah, it's just very cool. And it was interpreted into or adapted into She's the Man, which is, as far as I recall, I've not seen it in many years, but when I was a child I very much enjoyed that film.
I don't think I had the pleasure of seeing that one.
Really? It's actually very good. It's, I think, Amanda Bynes.
I may have to source it out.
It's really good. Basically, she plays Viola, and she's just like this kind of awkward, quite butchy teenage girl who takes her brother's place at I think a football academy, because she's way better at football and he runs away with a band. But then she falls in love with Channing Tatum, but she's a boy. And it's really good. As far as I recall, disclaimer, it may have aged very poorly. But as a teenager growing up, questioning pretty much everything I thought about gender and sexuality, it was pretty lovely to see this just a fun tradition of cross-dressing. I think we should all cross-dress more in real life. I really do.
Yes,
I think that would be bloody great.
I came away from, I mentioned the chat I had with Jessica from Drag Prov earlier, and I came away from that podcast like, it is absolutely ridiculous that not every single person does drag.
Right.
Like, why am I wasting my time not being a woman sometimes? It seems absurd.
Completely. Oh, it's so much fun. I've done it drag a couple of times, but it's quite, not in any significant capacity, mostly dressed as Henry VIII, not gonna lie to you. But I think, yeah, if you want to do it, fucking go for it. It's such a joyous thing to do, and the fact that you have the power to create this persona and create how people perceive you, I mean, the way that Ed and Cheska do it is fucking fantastic, and it just, watching them, you can't help but listen to how they talk about it, see how they perform, and just be really, really engaged by it and inspired. I really rate Drag Prof.
They really are absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Vicky, did you study hard for your exams?
Oh God. Did my mother email you, or she just send the raven as she usually does? No, I studied very, very hard for my GCSEs, and I studied pretty hard for my A-levels, and in university I studied as hard as I could, is what I'll say.
That sounds like a very reasonable answer.
What we call diplomatic, and I will be going into no further detail. But in university, all I wanted to do was perform. All I wanted to do was get engaged with these fictional universes, get engaged with narrative and storytelling. And I loved history, and I still love history. And I'm very grateful to the people who took time to drag me through a history course. But it just wasn't where my heart was at university. And I think the tutors that really clicked with me, they managed to adapt their style. So one of my tutors, who was fantastic, was just like, just bring your essay to the tutorial, and then we'll just go through the essay, and that'll be the tutorial. And that was so much easier and so much better than, sending it in advance and then fretting around for a few days. And I know it's ridiculous, but these things do develop. These things do, become barriers when you're not all there or when you're struggling with stuff.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah, I think if I went back now, I like to say that I would study harder or find it deep down in myself that I could do 12-hour days in the library. But at the end of the day, all I wanted to do was perform. And if you had examined me on performance, I would have studied exceptionally hard. So that's what I say. I think it's easier to study for things that you are more passionate about. But I did. I mean,
quite right.
I got good results, so whatever. Whatever, Mum.
Oh, you're one of those people who didn't study very hard, but absolutely aced it.
Yeah. No,
I'm one of those
studied as
people
well
who
as I
didn't study
could.
very hard, and my results reflected that.
Oh no.
And I can live with that. And my wife studied exceptionally hard and got a first in her degree from Oxford, and she deserved that. But yeah, the people who didn't study very hard and came out very well, grr.
I got a 2-1, and nobody has to know how safely I got that 2-1. And that is where I am, because my 2-1 has not got me any shows, but my performances have. So there we go.
True. Vicky, do you know any identical twins?
No. Or maybe I do, but they haven't let on.
Oh yeah, maybe it's two people,
Yeah.
but they are just acting like one person.
Because neither of them can stand 24 hours of exposure to me, so they've got to take shifts like nannies. No, but at one point when I was in primary school, we had 2 sets of non-identical twins, 2 sets of one boy, one girl twins in our class of 30 in a very small village school.
What are the chances of that?
Yeah.
I mean, there probably is an actual statistical answer, but
But we're not here for statistics.
we don't need to go into that. I'm much more into the kind of what are the chances, but never want to know the actual answer.
Do you know any identical twins, Connor?
Do I know any identical twins?
I don't know why this is the question I've chosen to turn back on you. I could be like, what's your favourite video? Or what's your irrational fear? But I'm like, no, tell me about your history with twins.
I probably do, and I'm probably gonna offend someone I know by saying nope. They'll be like, Connor, I've told you 100 times about my twin sister.
Yeah.
Oh shit. But no, I remember there were some identical twins. There were 2 sets of identical twin brothers a couple of years above me at school. And I remember they were real shits. And so I think I developed some kind of unconscious bias where I'm like, oh, all twins are awful. I'm like, yeah, Fred and George, we side with them.
Of course.
But objectively speaking, they make the school janitor's life much more difficult than it needs to be. And they're really just picking on him because he's on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale.
You're right. And he doesn't even have magic. Filch doesn't have magic as far as I recall.
Exactly. So he had to mop up the mess.
It's just a miserable boy.
So Fred and George, arguably terrible people. The 2 sets of twins who were at my school, definitely terrible people.
Well, I'm
And
convinced.
so, if you're a twin listening to this, I'm sorry, but it is the official opinion of Jericho Comedy that you're absolute monsters.
Does anyone else hear just the looming of an Alex and Harry shaped shadow behind Connor right now? Alex is about to like smash his hand through your window, grab your microphone and be like, it is not the official opinion of Jericho Comedy.
This is when the emergency broadcast system comes in and it's just Harry saying, we apologise, these are not the views of Jericho Comedy. Conor McReynolds is not affiliated with Jericho Comedy ever again.
Now back to your regularly scheduled broadcasting. And it's just James Acaster on repeat.
Vicky, my final question is this. What is the lowest art form?
Sarcasm?
I like sarcasm.
Or
I'm going
limbo.
to stand up for sarcasm here.
Oh, are you? Well, that's a surprise. Nah, sarcasm I think is
lowest-
just, it depends. I guess it depends if you're doing it in a fun, light-hearted way, but it's so often so negative, and I think that nobody should ever be
That's
made fun of
true.
for what they say, unless it's truly heinously stupid, in which case fucking go for it. But usually it's just like you try and say something nice to someone and someone doesn't believe your intentions are good, and then they're like, oh yeah, like you care. And it's like, well, I did before, but now you're being a prick. So I guess you're right in a weird way.
I also feel that there's a small part of you that's just paid sarcasm the ultimate compliment, because the question was, what's the lowest art form?
Ooh.
And so you've classified sarcasm as an art
I do
form in
think there is
itself, which I
nuance.
don't think anybody was doing before.
There is nuance. The lowest form of art is either sarcasm or limbo, and I'll stand by both of those answers. One in terms of sophistication, the other in terms of physicality.
Just purely,
Yeah.
from distance to the
I
ground.
think it's pretty impressive, actually, when you see professional limboers. It's amazing. How do you support all that weight on, like, your ankles? What's going on?
If you're listening to this, it means you've already discovered and have been enjoying the Jericho Comedy Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. But did you know that we at Jericho Comedy have another brilliant podcast series? It's called The Dinner Party. In each episode of The Dinner Party, I chat to fantastic, creative, brilliant, funny people all about their dream dinner parties. I find out the venue, the menu, and the guest list. They tell me about who their guests are, why they're getting an invite, and how the conversation would go. It's been such a joy of a series speaking to some phenomenally talented, creative, funny, and fascinating people. One of my favorite episodes in the series so far was when I got to sit down with star of Live at the Apollo and author of Clop Actually, Laura Lex. Laura put so much thought into her dream dinner party. It was an absolute joy to hear about it. Here's a little clip of Laura introducing one of her dream dinner party guests. And yes, you might have already guessed who it is. Check it out. As a football manager, this man has achieved almost everything. As a personality, he's impossible not to love. And as an imagined husband and father, he's pragmatic, charming, supportive, and insanely sexy. Obviously, your last guest is your husband, Jurgen Klopp.
Yes.
Now, Laura, which Jurgen Klopp are you inviting? Are you inviting the actual Jurgen Klopp or the imagined father of Clip?
I'm inviting the actual Jurgen Klopp.
Okay.
And also his actual wife, if she'd like to come. I'll find another very comfortable chair. I feel like I need to say thank you and sorry in equal measure to actual. Also, I want to meet him. He just seems so great and lovely, and I really, really admire him. But also, I would love a way to not weirdly tell him how grateful I am to him as a huge source of psychological affection at the beginning of lockdown, when it felt like everything in the world was going to trash. The worst people get the best jobs. He seemed like a beacon of the right person having the right job, and like a good guy winning and using a platform for good.
Yes.
And I'd like to say thank you to him for not sending any lawyers in my direction to ask me not to do it, because I was halfway through buying a house when my career collapsed, and if it hadn't been for the book, I would have had to have pulled out and lost everything we'd worked for. So thank him for that. And I'd just
That's
like to
pretty
meet
great.
him. He seems great, doesn't he?
He really does. I mean, the version of Klopp that you wrote is very reasonable and very patient and not particularly emotional. But actually, the football man, he's very passionate and emotional when it comes to
Yeah.
football. He's quoted as saying that his approach, it's very emotional, very fast, very strong, not boring, no chess. Of course, tactical, but tactical with a big heart.
Yeah.
And this, when I sort of said that I saw a similarity between you and Klopp, this was another one that I kind of thought, like, your comedy has a huge amount of heart, but it's so well structured as well. I mean, like your stories and the
Thanks,
set
mate.
is
It's
so
a 4-4
tactical.
too.
It is a proper 4-4-2. But yeah, you got great joke density. It's so structured and like all that stuff. Is it ridiculous to suggest that creative people like you, comedians, authors, or musicians or whoever it may be, creative people can sort of learn something from an approach like Klopp's to his work, which is obviously in lots of respects very, very different to what we do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about him in terms of him as a football manager. I know him as a personality, but
Yeah.
he genuinely blew my mind being asked about coronavirus and saying, I don't know. Don't
Yeah.
ask me. Don't have clips of somebody giving advice when they have no expertise. And
It's so
genuinely, since
refreshing.
since I watched him do that in March, I've said I don't know to people, and it stalls interviews. But they say, "What do you think about this?" And I go, "I don't know."
Yeah.
And I'm not going to speculate because it's, if it's just like, oh, it could be this and it could be this, and it's generic stuff like, what's the Earl of Warwick's personality like, then sure, who am I hurting by having a guess? But when it's sort of like, well, what do you think about who should use these Olympic roles in which gender? Like, I think it's all right for me to go, oh, ask scientists and then apply the science with some
Yeah.
compassion. That, like, there has to be a limit to our desire for attention superseding intelligence.
Yes, 100%. It's such an admirable quality. I mean, he's so expert in what he does, and then just a very cool, seemingly down to earth guy when it comes to things that he's perhaps not supposed to have an expert opinion on.
Yeah.
You mentioned right at the end of your book, I loved Klopp actually. It was such
Thank you. Have you read it?
funny, enjoyable. Well, I listened to the audiobook, which was so wonderful. You read it so well. It was so funny. Your Jurgen Klopp voice, it was like he was there in the studio. You mentioned right at the end, and I can cut this bit out of it, sort of a bit spoilery or whatever, but the imagined responses and attitudes of Klopp are essentially the kind of responses and attitudes you've kind of trained yourself to have a bit with your anxieties and stress, which I thought was really, really interesting. Was it in any way helpful?
You even read the acknowledgements, mate.
Oh, yeah. No, I was there right to the end. The
Were you
Hodder and
driving and you
Stoughton.
couldn't switch to a different podcast?
I was folding my laundry, I'll admit. But was it helpful or interesting for you in any way to like spend so much time writing and thinking in that kind of mindset? Because it's a pragmatism that I really wish I could tap into when I'm depressed or when I'm having a bad time. It seems like a very useful voice to have access to.
I think I will find the book helpful now it's printed and bound and that stuff is written down.
Yeah.
At the time, I never find creative things about mental health stuff helpful in any way because you're juggling mental health coping mechanisms with a desire for success from a creative project.
Sure.
So I'm incredibly proud of this book because, there was pretty much no way I could turn down the book deal, really, given what we were on the precipice of at the time. The thought of turning down any work coming in was like,
it would be insane.
No.
Yeah.
Especially as the deal came with the sort of follow-up of, if you write this, you can write any novel you like afterwards.
And that's so exciting.
But then when I sat down to write it, I sort of looked at the original tweets and I thought, how do I make this a book? Like, what's going to keep people reading? It can't just be 2 and 3 liners. It's got to have some heart and some love in it.
Yeah.
And then obviously I was writing domestic situations, and I think you generally write, I write to a certain extent from my own perspective, and the things that rile me are usually anxieties about tiny things that I wish I didn't get riled about, but I do, and I can't always keep a lid on them. So it felt right to me to use the book to explore those, to almost write a self-help book that isn't a self-help book, you know?
Yeah,
to be
exactly.
a sort of comfort blanket kind of book to kind of go, come on, you know this, but sometimes it's easier to hear it as if it's from someone else's voice.
From Jürgen Klopp.
Yeah. What better voice to hear it from?
It's so great. I mean, on a very practical level, Laura, you've got Jürgen at your dinner party and possibly his wife as well. What do you think it would be like to speak to a man who you've written some pretty steamy things about?
Jesus Christ. Can you even imagine how mortifying it's going to be?
It's got to happen at some stage where you'll meet him.
Like, I'd just be so embarrassed to sort of be like, I'm not a weirdo. Like, I know I've written an entire book imagining we're married, and I've never met you or watched football, but I'm not weird. Like, yeah, I'd be mortified. Hopefully I'd be more embarrassed than him. I'd like to think that I've done it respectfully. I certainly haven't tried to objectify his body or, you know, salivate. Like, there's very little physical description, and I don't, but yeah, gosh, you'd have to do a shot together, wouldn't you, to get over that?
Yeah. You just keep a bottle of Scotch candy all night. Yeah. All right, now it's time for us to wade through the murky waters of deception in a game called Fact or Fiction. Vicky and I will each offer 3 pieces of information. These will either be unbelievably true or all too believably false. We have to guess whether the other person is offering a piece of fact or a piece of fiction. 1 point for a correct guess, or your opponent gets the point if they fool you. Does that sound good, Vicky?
That sounds fantastic. I'm ready for this rematch. You kicked my ass last time, so...
Oh, I don't like to brag. You know. Well, Vicky, you are the guest on the Jericho Comedy Podcast, so you get to go first. What is your first piece of information?
My first piece of information is Goodyear is the largest tyre manufacturer in the world. Yeah, that's right. You didn't expect it. You expected more niche content, didn't you? You expected more niche sea monk
More
content.
niche than tyre manufacturers.
You expected me to talk about venomous shrews again, but no. McReynolds, I'm coming at you from a whole other angle. I'm the scrappy underdog. I won't be outdone a second time. Or maybe I will be.
Goodyear.
Goodyear.
The largest tyre manufacturer in the world. I guess there are a couple of ways to interpret that question. You know, are they the manufacturers of the largest tyre in the world? Or in terms of business, they dominate the market. I'm aware of Pirelli, a fine Italian tyre manufacturer.
And a possible supporter of this show, by the sounds of it. A fine tyre manufacturer. I often enjoy...
We try to make it more subtle than that. My plan had been to slip into conversation. By the way, Vicky, I just got these amazing Pirelli tyres.
Did you?
And all I had to do was visit Pirelli.com for 25% off using the code Jericho Tires. Goodyear, they're a huge company, but I think you're banking on the idea that maybe they're the only tire business anyone knows. And there might be a bigger... I am going to say this is fiction.
It's fiction? You're accusing me of lying on the Jericho Comedy Podcast? Really? That
About
I would
tires, of all things.
Of tires? The rubbery circles close to my heart. I cannot drive. That's why I said the words rubbery circles. Yeah, that is a point to you, Connor.
Yay!
They are not the largest tyre manufacturer in the world. The largest tyre manufacturers in the world is Lego. They produce 870,000 tyres per day, and nearly half of all Lego sets contain a wheel. They got a world record for it.
Oh, that is very impressive.
Yes, but I still lost the point. Damn it, we're down. Now, Hawley, don't panic.
But you've
This
got
has
a
happened
moral
before.
victory, and no one can take that away from you.
Don't listen to him, Hawley. Morals mean shit. You gotta get your hands back on the fucking potter's wheel. You gotta deceive. You gotta confuse. You gotta adapt. You gotta perplex. You can't lose 5-1 a fucking again. Sorry, I think I just channeled my 6-year-old self again there. So if you edit that first bit out,
Vicky.
it's gonna make no fucking sense.
All right, Vicky. My first piece of information is that a lethal dose of water is 6 liters.
Ooh. Now, I know the recommended daily intake for your average person is 2 litres. And I think, that it's very dangerous to drink a gallon of something because physically your stomach expands. So 6 litres though. I mean, that is 3 times as much water as you should have. But I'm suspicious that maybe the lethal dosage is something like 6.5 litres or 5.2 litres, and you're deceiving me by giving me a number. I mean, it seems like you wouldn't be happy at 6 litres. It seems reasonable that if you've had a super busy, exhausting day, you would have to drink double the water.
Yeah.
But triple the water without your cells expanding? It, like, physically affecting the chemistry of your cells? I think if you drank 6 litres of water, you'd die. I'm going to say that's fact.
You are absolutely correct.
All right,
was
Holly, keep your cool.
flummoxed by this piece of information.
Really? What got you about it?
And I'm really hoping it doesn't include tea, because I think I'm about a cup and a half away today from just dying, apparently.
No.
But yes, Jericho Comedy listeners, please take note.
Yeah.
If you are nearing the 6 liter limit, just stop now or you will die.
Don't drive
what a
as
weird
well.
way to die. I mean, I guess
limit.
drowning is a form of that, but
yeah, because
sitting down and drinking 6 liters of water and dying, there's something a bit pathetic about that death.
I don't know. I think it's kind of magical. Like, you just sort of liquefy yourself like that dude from X-Men, the first X-Men film, X-Men 2000.
Oh, yeah?
It's the Senator Kelly, where he gets subjected to, spoilers, Magneto's, like, mutantizing ray and then melts and bursts on that table.
That is an excellent reference to the earliest movie in the modern MCU. I salute you.
Thank you very much. Wow.
All right, well, Vicky, what is your second piece of information?
All right, okay, I'm ready. Now then.
Let's do this.
Connor. Tiffany is a name that was popular in 12th century Europe.
Tiffany. It doesn't sound right, which probably means that it is fact.
Breakfast at Tiffany's. Yo, first I must finish all of my chores on this small holding we have, and then walk many miles into the village to speak with our baker. Very well, Tiffany.
Obviously, Tiffany, very popular character in EastEnders. Tiffany.
People would like Tiffany.
After a while, it stops meaning anything. Tiffany.
Sorry to any Tiffany's listening.
Yes, sorry, Tiffany. You mean something, Tiffany.
Yeah, but your name is shit, he says. Your name, it does not bear more than 8 repeats before it turns to dust in Connor's mouth. He says it a 9th time and a blight falls upon your lands, Tiffany, as you are not safe.
I am going to say that this is fact. I think you wouldn't have said it if it wasn't true. I trust you.
Damn it. You have a point.
Hey!
Tiffany was very popular in 12th century Europe. It's short for the longer and quite beautiful name, Theophania. which I think means God delivers or something. But there's actually been a lot written about this. It's called the Tiffany problem, because Tiffany would be a completely fine name to call your medieval character in a book, let's say, or in a film. But the modern audience would look at that and think that it was standing out as incorrect. So it's called the Tiffany problem when historical fact doesn't line up with our perceived concepts of what we think about a historical era. There's the Tiffany problem.
Very interesting.
Okay. Well, there you are. Well, I hope you enjoy that point. Maybe add an acre to the grounds. Enjoy it. Enjoy it kind of fine.
All right, I believe in you, Vicky.
Thank
You're gonna get this one.
Don't support me. Don't be nice. It only makes it worse when you're nice.
All right, well, is this fact or fiction? Okay. Donny Osmond was once cast as Batman in a Broadway musical.
Now, I happen to know that Donny Osmond is capable of being in big musicals because he was the Joseph I grew up with. When every time I was ill from school, I would ask my mother to put in the Joseph VCR and I would just watch it on repeat. And I think, in terms of my psychology, I came out fine, definitely. There's nothing.
You do have a fabulous coat selection.
I do. I look handsome and smart and like a walking work of art. As many folk exclaim as they see me stride down the street. But I do have 11 treacherous brothers I do not trust. So I desperately hope this is true, because I don't think that there is a franchise better suited to musicals than Batman. I think possibly ever.
I couldn't agree more.
I would certainly prefer to have seen Batman 2019 than Cats 2019, although a combination of the two would be incredible. The Jellicle Bruce is Jellicle does. Not that Bruce Wayne has anything to do with Batman, obviously. He's just an entrepreneur.
Of course.
Just,
I don't know why you would bring up the CEO of Wayne Enterprises right now.
I know, I'm sorry.
In a discussion about Batman.
So stupid. I'm going to say it's...
That playboy billionaire, he's always running around with supermodels.
Yeah, but you know what he's not doing? Investing in the infrastructure of Gotham. At the end of the day, could he make more of a difference as Bruce Wayne? Long-term economically. That's a debate for a different time. End of the day, I think it's true, not because I necessarily think it's likely, but because the second you introduce this concept to my heart, it sang in a angelic chorus of desperate want, and I can do nothing but think of the joys of Donny Osmond, the joys of Donny Osmond as musical Batman.
Oh, I feel so guilty right now.
Connor, no.
I'm afraid it was just fantasy casting on my part. It's fiction.
How dare you!
I used a version of that, I believe, before, where I took it too far. I had to change Donny Osmond from Philip Schofield, but also I said Philip Schofield was once cast as Bane in a musical version of Batman.
I would watch that
and
so
the
much.
person I was speaking to was like, obviously that's false. Don't be so ridiculous. Philip Schofield is Bane.
They're not as easily
I had to
by
rein it in a little bit.
The words musical of Batman as I am. Those three words just caught me like a stupid fish on a very, very simple fucking hook. I'm furious. All right, very well. Let's see if we can tie at least.
All right. Well, what is your third and final fact?
Gotta pick. All right. Connor.
Yes.
There is a type of Scottish folkloric creature that dumps people in puddles.
That is the kind of mischief that I love. The kind of mischief that I associate with the good people of Scotland. Just a creature that comes out of a bush or a hedge, just pushes you into a big puddle.
Get in there, you wee bastard. Yeah, that's it. And just runs away.
I love the idea that there's a creature who's just so dedicated to just causing mild inconvenience. It's like, it's not there to ruin your life. It's just there to get your shoes wet. Like, come on, man.
The autumn
These are
dunker's
new.
back again.
Oh, very much in the same vein as you wanting Donny Osmond to be Batman. I so want this creature to exist. I am saying fact.
Oh, Connor. You've beaten me again. It is true.
Hey!
Very well done. It's called a brag. It's related to the Kelpie mythology, which is fucking terrifying. So Kelpies, for anyone who doesn't know, I love these folkloric stories, are very famous, Scottish shapeshifters that live in kind of lochs and bogs, and they take the shapes of these beautiful horses or sometimes maidens, and then the second you attempt to ride them or touch them, you kind of stick to them and they drag you back down under the lake, and they eat you up.
Yeah.
But there is a cousin of the Kelpie called a brag, which does the same, is a shapeshifter that takes the form of a beautiful horse and then just takes you for a ride and then bucks you off in a puddle and runs away laughing. I just love this.
So funny.
Some of these laws, some of this law, you're like, oh, maybe it could be true. Maybe someone, saw something spooky in a loch or lost a friend to this. But that is clearly just a dude who tried to nick a horse and then fell off it. He's just lying in that puddle like, that was a fucking Kelpie, that was. No, please, Johnny, you're drunk. No, I swear. Well, okay, did it kill you? Did it eat you? No, but it dumped me in a fucking puddle.
I really love it. I think that's the next big fantasy creature that needs its moment on the big screen.
I know what you are. Or say it out loud. A weird kind of Kelpie thing? Yeah. They sparkle in the sunlight.
Well, Vicky, this one, this is to make it 4-2, which is closer. So the pressure's on with this
try
one.
And help, Connor.
Apple.
I'm in my shame ditch. Come on, fling the fact or fiction. Come on, let's do this.
Here we go.
Slap the rest of the mud.
Apple is worth more than the entire FTSE 100 combined.
Apple is worth more.
Apple
than the entire.
Worth more than the entire FTSE 100 combined.
Interesting. You see, where I'm falling down is I'm not entirely sure why Apple isn't a member of the FTSE 100. Because that would imply it, right?
Quite. That's true.
I guess the FTSE's for trading companies that are traded and exchanged, and maybe Apple doesn't do that. But then people do have shares in Apple. Now, what you've done here is cleverly not only, once again, absolutely kicked my ass in this game, but you've also exposed my limited understanding of the stock market. It's a double blow.
If you could see how my eyes are screaming now, if you'd asked for any explanation on even what the FTSE 100 is.
Why did you bring
it's
this?
Something to do with flirting.
Why did you bring this feral dog into our podcast room, Connor? You're like, look at this dog. And I'm like, does it bite? And you're like, does it bite? Is it slavering in your hands? Like, well, I'm trying, because if it doesn't bite, we shouldn't have it in here. And you're like, but it's in here now. I'm gonna say, look, it sounds ridiculous and too much, but I also think that Apple's a really huge company, so I'm gonna say, yeah, it's fact.
You are absolutely correct.
Okay, I'll climb out the
rather
ditch.
depressingly.
Oh no!
Apple, as a company, is worth more than $2 trillion, and that is worth more than all 100 companies in the FTSE 100 combined.
Wow, that is.
How many iPhones have they sold this year?
That is bonkers.
And before I forget, Jericho Comedy fully endorses Apple's fine range of products. There we go. I'm hoping the sponsorship deal brings them back below that $2 trillion. It'd be so humiliating for them.
Yeah,
they had to give us $50 for an endorsement, and it brought them back down below $2 trillion. Ah, shit.
Ah, crap. All right. Make the iPhone 18 or whatever, where it's exactly the same, but we remove speakers from it. It has no buttons. It just has a thing you smack against your forehead, and then it tells you whether or not you got head trauma. Have you seen the new Apple thing? Is Apple Fitness, where you basically, it's just a new fitness program that you can get on Apple Watches and things like that. That basically tracks you. And the thing that strikes me about Apple Fitness is you can compare how quickly you do workouts with how quickly other people who use this service do workouts. And I'm like,
oh, God.
That sounds like just objectively the worst thing. I literally cannot imagine a worse thing than sitting there having tried really hard but probably not achieved that much in terms of a workout, and then looking at my watch and seeing that, I don't know, Matthew in Senegal has fucking lapped the entirety of his city in the time it took me to do 10 minutes of quite tough steep walking on a treadmill. I just can't imagine. Can you imagine? Like, I struggle being in a gym and comparing myself to the maybe 3 or 4 other people in a gym. Could you imagine the global scale on which you could be humiliated? Oh, man.
Congratulations, you're in the top 94% of people who have done this. Like, don't fucking patronize me, Apple. I know what you're saying.
Completely.
That sounds so destroying.
Oh, it does.
Well, at the end of Fact or Fiction, it is Vicky Hawley on 2 points, but Jericho Comedy's Conor McReynolds on 4 points.
Well played, Connor. Well played. I'm not even enjoying
this applause. I wanted you to win.
Oh, Connor, no.
If it was a moral victory, you brought way more interesting facts to the table. So
yeah, but it's not moral. Nothing about Fact or Fiction is about morality. It's about cold, hard combat, brain against brain.
It is the least moral game on the planet. It is cold, unfeeling. Everything that we despise in comedy is evident in this competitive thunderdome of knowledge. It's everything knowledge shouldn't be. Competitive. Sinful
podcast host and ethically reprehensible man Conor McReynolds is back with another fun little game to destroy you. You can use that as an opening.
Oh, brilliant.
Chop that in at the front.
Vicky, as ever, it is just so much fun chatting to you. I really can't wait until you're able to come back and do Best of the Quest with us and join in all the fun improv shows that you're a part of with us. If our lovely listeners wanted to stay across all the fun work you're doing online with your podcasts and Twitch and all the rest of it, how can we experience everything that Vicky Hawley has to offer?
Well, let me tell you. You can log on to twitch.tv/Vicky's World RPG. We stream a Dungeons and Dragons live play show that I DM with some very funny nerdy friends every Thursday from 7 till 9 GMT. But if you miss that, you can catch up, or if there's something else you want to watch, you can catch up on our beautifully edited podcast, including a really gorgeous soundtrack, which is called Vicky's World RPG, on all good podcast apps, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the others. So all of those. I'm also in another podcast called Sasha Ellen's Character Building Experience. We just recorded a couple new episodes, so go ahead and find that on all your good podcast providers as well. And if you if you ever want to find out if I could ever be seen in the real life again instead of doing a hologram performance like Hatsune Miku, then go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Vic Hawley. And hey, if you fancy having this asshole run some D&D games for you, then I also do that. So drop me a message and I could run D&D for you. And I promise be better and more competent than I come across in this podcast. Please edit out that promise, Connor. Get rid of that. I promise too much for my brand.
Oh, well, we will add links to all of those things into the episode description. And Vicky, thank you so much. And I very, very, very much hope that I get to see you live and in person again very soon.
Thank you so much, Connor. Thank you for having me.
Thanks,
Have
Vicky.
Bye.
Well, there we go. That was the absolutely wonderful Vicky Hawley. We're adding links to all of Vicky's Twitch and Twitter accounts and all that stuff into the episode description. If you're into role-playing tabletop games or fancy getting into fantasy stories, I really can't think of anyone better than Vicky to guide you through those worlds. She's so warm, so funny, so creative, so check out her work online. We got some really great shows coming up over the next few weeks. We got some stand-up shows at Cheney School in Headington in a lovely, socially distanced, safe way. And more stand-up coming to the brilliant North Wall in summertime, later in October as well. Or if Vicky's put you in the mood for some improv comedy, head to the Oxford Playhouse website and snap up tickets for the Dragpov Review and the show that must not be named, both of which are coming there later in the autumn. We'd be super grateful if you would consider donating a little bit toward Oxfordshire Mind. We've got a fundraising page that we'll stick the link to into the episode description. Jericho Comedy have raised over £70,000 for the vital work that Oxfordshire Mind do over the last few years, and we would be so grateful if you've enjoyed the podcast, if you would consider donating a little bit towards their wonderful work. Check back next week when I'll be chatting to another wonderful Jericho Comedy performer, but until then, thanks so much for listening, and bye-bye.